The champagne glowed amber under the crystal chandeliers when my son's voice cut through the reception hall. "Daddy!" One word. Just one. But it silenced 200 guests mid-sip. The quartet in the corner continued playing Pachelbel's canon, the notes now jarringly cheerful against the sudden stillness. I watched Roman's face transform, shock splitting open his carefully constructed facade. His fingers loosened around the champagne flute, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought it might shatter against the marble floor. But he recovered, gripping it so tightly his knuckles blanched white. 7 years of silence shattered in 7 seconds. His mother, Eleanor, stood 3 steps behind him. While others gasped, her expression calculated, recalibrated. She'd always been 10 moves ahead in a game I didn't know we were playing. Ezra, my beautiful boy with his father's eyes, waited at the bottom of the small platform, his small hand still gripping the microphone he'd taken from the best man. His 7-year-old face registered confusion as the room's atmosphere shifted. "Is that him, Mommy?" he whispered when I reached him, his voice still amplified enough for the closest tables to hear. "The man from your pictures?" I nodded, taking the microphone gently from his hand and passing it to a server. My heart hammered against my ribs as Roman's new bride, my former sister Tessa, emerged from the crowd, her wedding gown rustling like angry whispers. I never planned for this moment, but perhaps I'd been waiting for it since the day I signed those papers 7 years ago. Before champagne flutes froze mid-air, and before my son called out to the father he'd never met, I had built us a life of quiet dignity in a modest craftsman house in East Atlanta. 3 bedrooms, a yard with a maple tree, and enough distance from my past that I could almost pretend it wasn't following us. Every night, Ezra and I had our ritual. Bath time, then 2 books, one he chose, one I chose, followed by 5 minutes of wonder questions. "Mommy, do fish get thirsty?" he asked one evening, his dark curls damp against the dinosaur pillowcase. "I don't think they notice it the way we do," I told him, smoothing the blanket. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. I knew what was coming before he spoke. "Does my daddy ever get thirsty for me?" The questions about Roman had evolved as Ezra grew. At 4, they were simple. "Where is my daddy?" At 5, "Why doesn't he live with us?" Now, at 7, they carried the weight of understanding that absence was a choice. "I think," I said carefully, "that thirst isn't always something people recognize when they feel it." I never lied to him. Half-truths and gentle omissions, yes, but never lies. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Maya, my closest friend since nursing school. I'd call her back later, after Ezra drifted off. She was the only one who knew the full story, who'd held my hand through the pregnancy, the birth, the rebuilding. I didn't start out alone. There was a time when Roman Mitchell looked at me like I'd hung the moon. We met at a charity gala for the hospital's new pediatric wing. I was there representing hospital administration. He was the promising surgical resident, Atlanta medical royalty in a perfectly tailored suit. "You're not charmed by me," he'd said, finding me alone on the terrace. "Should I be?" I'd replied, though my traitor heart was already skipping. "Everyone else is." He smiled, and it reached his eyes. "It's refreshing to work harder for once." What followed was 4 months of secret restaurant booths and whispered phone calls between his shifts. Plans for London, a prestigious fellowship he'd applied for, with promises of weekend visits and video calls. "We'd make it work," we said. Then 2 pink lines appeared on a plastic stick, and I took a photograph of the ultrasound to send him, unable to contain my nervous excitement. I never imagined that grainy black and white image would be the last picture of our family together. The first week after I sent the ultrasound, Roman's texts grew sporadic. Busy with fellowship prep, he'd explain. Video calls rescheduled, then canceled. The slow withdrawal was almost worse than what came next. The precision of it, like watching someone calculate exactly how much they could take before leaving. When my phone finally rang with his name 2 weeks later, I answered on the first ring. "Roman, I've been so worried." "Camille." His voice came through clinical, sterilized of emotion. "We need to discuss practical matters." He spoke of his fellowship, his 5-year plan now at risk, his family's expectations, the impossibility of fatherhood during his critical career formation. "My mother is concerned about the timing," he said, as though Eleanor Mitchell's concerns outweighed the life growing inside me. I'd met Eleanor once, at a hospital board function. She'd assessed me with cool precision, asking about my people in a way that made it clear she'd already investigated my background. Foster care, state college on scholarship, no pedigree worth mentioning. "Does concerned about timing mean concerned about me?" I asked Roman directly. His silence was answer enough. 3 days later, a courier arrived at my apartment door with a thick envelope. Inside, a paternity denial requiring DNA testing after birth, a non-disclosure agreement, and settlement papers offering financial support through the child's 18th birthday in exchange for my signature and silence. The sum was substantial, enough to raise a child comfortably, to provide opportunities I'd never had. Pride warred with practicality as I sat at my kitchen table, reading the pages until dawn. I thought of my childhood, bouncing between foster homes until the Porters took me in at 14, giving me my first taste of stability. I thought of what security would mean for my baby. In the end, I signed for the financial support, but inserted a single modification to the NDA. I would not be prohibited from telling our child their father's identity when I deemed appropriate. I half expected the altered agreement to be rejected, but a week later, the first deposit appeared in a newly created trust account. When Ezra was born on a stormy April morning, I searched his tiny face for any emotion beyond the overwhelming love I felt. Relief, perhaps, that this perfect being was finally here. But beneath that swelled a hollow ache that the chair beside my hospital bed remained empty. I sent Roman a photo anyway. Ezra, red-faced and squalling, 7 pounds 4 ounces of new life. Then another on Ezra's first birthday, his first steps, first day of preschool. I never received a response, but I kept sending them annually, digital bottles cast into a digital ocean. "You'll never guess who Tessa's marrying," Janine said, stabbing a fork into her salad. We met monthly for lunch, a connection to my former workplace before I'd transferred to a smaller hospital with better hours for single motherhood. I made an inquiring noise, mouth full of sandwich. "That gorgeous surgeon from the Mitchell family, Roman something. Apparently they've been working together at Atlanta Memorial for 2 years now." The bite of sandwich turned to ash in my mouth. I reached for water, buying time, certain I'd misheard. "Tessa Porter?" I managed finally. "My Tessa?" Janine nodded, oblivious to my pallor. "Small world, right? Your foster sister landing one of Atlanta's most eligible bachelors." Small world. The phrase echoed as I drove home on autopilot, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers ached. Tessa, who'd called me Big Sis from the day the Porters brought me home. Tessa, who'd followed me into healthcare with wide-eyed admiration. Tessa, whose medical school recommendation letter, I now realized with sickening clarity, had likely come from Eleanor Mitchell. Our communication had dwindled over recent years, her medical training, my motherhood creating natural distance. But this was no accident of fate. 3 days later, the invitation arrived in cream-colored linen, gold embossing catching the afternoon light. Tessa Marie Porter and Roman Alexander Mitchell. I sat on my porch steps until the mail carrier was long gone, the envelope heavy in my hands. Inside, my phone pinged with notifications. Suddenly, algorithms served photos of them together populated my social feeds. Engagement announcements, hospital charity events. How long had I been algorithmically sheltered from this connection? That night, after Ezra was asleep, I called Maya. "Tell me I shouldn't go," I said when she answered. "Go where?" Maya asked, but her tone suggested she already knew. News traveled quickly in Atlanta's medical circles. "Tessa's wedding. To Roman." Maya's silence spoke volumes. Wow. She knows, Maya. She has to know. What are you hoping happens if you go? I had no answer. Confrontation? Closure? Some dramatic revelation? None seemed worth the potential cost. Then, Ezra found the invitation the next morning, pulling it from my purse while searching for permission slips I needed to sign. "Who are these people?" he asked, finger tracing the embossed names. "Someone I used to know," I said carefully, "and my foster sister." "Will I meet them?" His innocent question crystallized everything. This wasn't just about my history with Roman or Tessa's betrayal. 7 years of Ezra's questions about his father deserved answers, even if they weren't the ones any of us wanted. The RSVP card sat on my desk for 3 days before I finally checked "will attend +1." I added Ezra's name in the space provided, my handwriting steady despite the tremor in my chest. I approached the wedding with the same methodical planning I brought to hospital crisis management. Attire, a navy blue dress, elegant but not attention-seeking. Responses, practiced in my bathroom mirror for inevitable questions about my relationship to the bride. Gift, a crystal picture frame, expensive but impersonal. "We're going to a special party," I explained to Ezra one evening as he helped me fold laundry, his small hands smoothing washcloths into imperfect rectangles. "People Mommy used to know." "Like a reunion?" he asked, familiar with the concept from school. "Something like that." I folded a t-shirt with unnecessary precision. "There might be people there who are surprised to see us." Why? Such a simple question. So impossible to answer fully. "Sometimes grown-ups lose touch with each other," I said finally. "But it's important we go." Maya insisted on driving us. "For emotional support and as a witness," she declared. "Plus, I'm not missing what might be the social event of the season." Her attempt at lightness barely masked her concern. She'd been there when I'd opened the settlement papers, when I'd paced the delivery room between contractions, when I'd cried on Ezra's first day of kindergarten because there was no other parent to take first day photos with us. The night before the wedding, I tucked Ezra into bed, his dinosaur pajamas worn thin at the knees. "Will my father be at the party?" he asked, his voice small in the darkness. My heart stumbled. "What makes you ask that?" "You get a funny look when you talk about the party, like when I ask about him." I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words with care. "There will be many people there who are connected to our past." He was quiet for so long I thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, "I know what he looks like, Mommy." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I found your old pictures in the blue box under your bed. He looks like me, but bigger." I hadn't known Ezra had discovered the few photographs I'd kept, Roman and me at the botanical gardens, laughing at something now forgotten. Roman asleep on my old couch, medical textbook open on his chest. Sleep eluded me that night. I drafted and deleted a dozen messages to Tessa, ranging from accusations to pleas for explanation. In the end, I sent nothing. Tomorrow would write its own messages, deliver its own verdicts. The Mitchell estate sprawled across 3 manicured acres in Buckhead, the kind of old money Atlanta property that seemed to exist in a different dimension from my East Atlanta bungalow. White chairs in neat rows faced an arbor dripping with orchids worth more than my monthly mortgage. "Remember, stick close to me or Aunt Maya," I whispered to Ezra as we found seats near the back of the gathered crowd. He nodded solemnly, smoothing his tie with serious attention. I spotted Eleanor first, her silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon, directing staff with the precision of a field marshal. Then Roman appeared at the altar, tall and composed in his tuxedo. 7 years had etched subtle changes. Slight creases beside his eyes, a more assured posture. Success looked good on him, I thought bitterly. The ceremony passed in a blur of string quartet music and practiced vows. I kept my expression neutral, even as Tessa promised to be Roman's best friend and faithful partner. Once, she'd been my faithful partner in late-night study sessions and holiday meals with the Porters. Now she stood radiant in white, accepting a platinum band from the father of my child. At the reception, I steered Ezra toward the children's table, where hired supervisors coordinated age-appropriate activities. "I'll be right over there," I told him, pointing to where Maya saved seats at the farthest table from the head one. I was spooning fruit salad onto my plate at the buffet when Eleanor materialized beside me. "Camille Porter," she said, voice honeyed with false warmth. "What an unexpected surprise." "It's Camille Turner now," I corrected, meeting her gaze directly. "I've used my mother's name since Ezra was born." "Yes, well," she glanced toward the children's area. "Your presence here is bold." "I was invited," I said simply, holding up my plate as if it were a shield. "Tessa is family." "Family," Eleanor echoed, giving the word sharp edges. "Such a flexible concept in your experience, I imagine." The insult slid under my skin like a paper cut, but before I could respond, she leaned closer. "Do not make a scene. Whatever you think you're doing here, it won't end the way you hope." The memory flashed unbidden. Eleanor at my apartment door 7 years ago, settlement papers in manicured hands, explaining how Roman had reconsidered our relationship. "I never hoped for anything, Mrs. Mitchell," I replied coolly. "I simply accepted an invitation." She smiled thinly and moved away, intercepting Tessa, who had been approaching, wedding gown rustling with each step. They exchanged whispers, Tessa's eyes finding mine over her new mother-in-law's shoulder. Shock. Then something harder to name. She gave a small nod in my direction, then allowed herself to be guided toward other guests. I rejoined Maya, my appetite gone. "Eleanor knows we're here. I give it 10 minutes before Roman does too." True to prediction, I felt Roman's gaze find me during the salad course. His fork paused midway to his mouth, recognition dawning slowly. I looked away first, focusing intently on Ezra across the room, now folding paper airplanes with another child. The toasts began as dessert was served. Tessa's adoptive father spoke of pride and new beginnings. The maid of honor recalled college adventures. Then Roman stood, champagne in hand, thanking guests for celebrating this perfect union. I didn't immediately notice Ezra's absence from the children's table. Not until I saw him approaching the small platform where Roman stood, microphone in hand. "Excuse me," my son's voice carried across the speakers, polite but determined. "Can I say something too?" Roman looked down, confused but indulgent smile in place. A collective awe rippled through the crowd. "Of course, young man," he said, bending slightly. Ezra took the microphone, scanning the room until he found me. "That's my mom," he said, pointing. Then, with absolute certainty, he turned back to Roman. "And you're my daddy. I saw your pictures." The room suspended in collective breath. Roman's expression shifted from confusion to stunned recognition as he truly looked at Ezra's face. The same cleft chin, the same arched eyebrows over deep brown eyes. Everything happened at once. Gasps, murmurs. Tessa's abrupt exit from the head table. Eleanor rising, face flushed with anger, and me moving calmly through the chaos toward my son, who looked so small now under the weight of the revelation he'd unleashed. "You planned this," Eleanor hissed as she corralled us into a side room. Roman, Tessa, who'd returned white-faced, Maya, Ezra, and me. A tasteless ambush. "I didn't plan anything," I said, keeping one hand on Ezra's shoulder. Children have a way of speaking truths adults work hard to bury. The room, some kind of study with leather-bound books lining the walls, felt too small for the magnitude of what was happening. Ezra pressed against my side, sensing tension but not understanding its source. "Your invitation didn't include permission to destroy my son's wedding," Eleanor continued, her composure slipping. "Your son destroyed his own credibility when he denied his child," Maya interjected, stepping forward protectively. Roman hadn't spoken yet. He stared at Ezra with an intensity that made me want to shield him from view. "Is he really?" Roman finally managed, looking at me. "Yes," I said simply. "As your mother well knows, all the paperwork is in order. The payments into his trust fund arrive punctually every month." Tessa made a small sound, looking between Roman and Ezra with dawning comprehension. "You knew? About his child?" she asked. Not me, but Eleanor. Eleanor smoothed invisible wrinkles from her silk dress. "It was all handled appropriately." "Handled?" Tessa repeated. "You told me he'd had a meaningless fling years ago, that the woman tried to trap him with a pregnancy claim, but Tess proved it wasn't his." "That's not—" Roman started, but fell silent when the study door opened again. An older man entered, Roman's features mapped across a face with deeper lines. Richard Mitchell, whom I'd only ever seen in hospital board photographs. "I heard quite the commotion," he said mildly, though nothing about his posture was relaxed. His gaze found Ezra and lingered. "Good God, Eleanor. He looks exactly like Roman at that age." "You stay out of this!" Eleanor snapped at her husband. "I've managed this situation for 7 years without your interference." "Managed?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call intercepting correspondence? Altering documents? Lying to our son?" The room went still. Roman turned to his father. "What are you talking about?" Richard sighed heavily, looking suddenly older. "Your mother thought she was protecting your future. She convinced you the child wasn't yours, showed you falsified test results." "There were never any tests," I said quietly. "Just papers to sign and money to ensure my silence." Roman sank into a leather chair, looking between his parents with horrified understanding. "The emails I was sending, you told me they bounced back." "You wrote to me?" My voice caught. "For months after," he nodded. "But Mother said you'd changed your information, wanted a clean break." Tessa pressed her hands to her mouth, wedding ring catching the light. "You told me she was unstable, Eleanor. That she'd been fired from the hospital for ethical violations." Piece by piece, Eleanor's elaborate construction crumbled. Maya described finding documentation while temporarily working in Eleanor's office, redirected emails, arrangements with the family attorney. Through it all, Ezra watched with the simple clarity of childhood, finally asking the question that cut through the adult complexity. "Why didn't you want to know me?" Roman knelt to Ezra's eye level, hands hovering uncertainly before settling at his sides. "I did want to know you. I just believed something that wasn't true." Tessa stood abruptly, slipping her engagement ring from her finger and placing it deliberately on Richard's desk. "I think I need some air," she said, her voice unnaturally calm. She paused at the door, looking back at me. "I didn't know, Camille. I swear I didn't know until today." As she left, Roman asked quietly, "Could I have a moment with Camille and My son? The word hung in the air. My son, as the others filed out, Eleanor last, and most reluctant, practically pulled from the room by her husband. 1 month later, I sat on our front porch swing, watching Ezra and Roman plant marigolds along the walkway. Roman's visits had started awkwardly, scheduled for 2 hours every Saturday, conversations stilted and careful. But today marked a subtle shift. Ezra had called him unprompted, asking if he knew how to fix a leaking faucet. "The water keeps dripping, no matter how hard I turn it," he'd explained into my phone, which I'd reluctantly handed over. And somehow, a plumbing tutorial had transformed into gardening, Roman arriving with seedlings and child-sized garden gloves. My phone chimed with a text from Tessa. "Coffee tomorrow still okay?" I typed back a simple yes, watching Ezra demonstrate to Roman how deep to dig the holes. Our first meeting after the wedding had been at a neutral coffee shop midway between our homes. She'd pushed a manila envelope across the table. Her canceled honeymoon tickets, documentation she'd found in Eleanor's home office, and a torn wedding photo. "I should have asked questions," she'd said, stirring sugar into her latte. When Eleanor approached me about the hospital residency, about introducing me to Roman, it all seemed too perfect. "You didn't tear up your whole wedding album, did you?" I'd asked, nodding toward the photo fragment. "Just the ones with her in them," Tessa had replied, a hint of the old determination I remembered from our shared childhood. The reception had imploded after our confrontation in the study. Guests were told the couple had departed early for their honeymoon, a convenient fiction while Tessa moved her belongings out of the Buckhead condo Roman had purchased. She'd taken a leave of absence from the hospital, spending time with her parents. Our parents, the Porters who had raised us both. "Daddy, look at this worm!" Ezra's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I noted how naturally the word daddy had found its place in my son's vocabulary, no longer hypothetical or confined to bedtime questions. Roman looked up, catching me watching them. He smiled tentatively, not the practiced, confident smile from our past, but something more genuine in its uncertainty. That evening, after Roman left with promises to return for Ezra's baseball game next weekend, I found my son arranging his school pictures on his bookshelf. He'd placed a small frame next to them, one of the photographs from my blue box, Roman and me at the botanical gardens. "Is it okay that I have this?" he asked when he saw me noticing. "It's okay," I assured him, sitting on the edge of his bed. "How are you feeling about everything?" He considered this with the seriousness 7-year-olds reserve for truly important questions. I like that he knows how to fix things, and that he has the same crooked smile when he laughs. He does, doesn't he? "Are you and Daddy going to get married like he almost did with Aunt Tessa?" The question caught me by surprise. "No, sweetheart. Your father and we're not together that way, but we both love you very much." "Okay." He seemed satisfied with this answer, arranging his stuffed animals for bedtime. "I think it's better anyway. This way, I get 2 houses and nobody has to be sad." His simple wisdom left me speechless. I kissed his forehead, inhaling the scent of shampoo and garden dirt. Later, I stood at my bedroom window, watching the marigolds sway gently in the evening breeze. My phone lit up with a text from Roman. "Thank you for today," I typed back. He's been waiting his whole life to plant flowers with his father. The reply came quickly. "So have I. Some silences protect us, and others slowly poison everything we love. The truth has its own timeline. It waits until we're brave enough to speak it, or until it finds a voice of its own. My son found his voice that day at the wedding, and in doing so, he gave all of us permission to find ours. Not a happily ever after, perhaps, but an honestly ever after. And that, I was discovering, held its own kind of peace.